I'm Jack Bradley, filling in here for Steve Lance. Now, President Trump is now heading to Los Angeles to address wildfire devastation after surveying hurricane damage in Asheville, North Carolina. And he's vowing drastic reforms to FEMA and demanding changes in California. Joining us now live is NTD's White House correspondent, Iris Tao. Good evening, Iris. Tell us more about President Trump's trips today.
Good evening to you as well, Jack. President Trump is wrapping up his first week in office with trips to two states recently hit by disasters. He has already landed in Los Angeles, California, and while on the tarmac, he, along with California Governor Gavin Newsom, say they would put their differences aside and work together. Here's what they said. Watch.
We're going to need your help. You were there for us during COVID. I don't forget that. And I have all the expectations that we'll be able to work together.
And the way you get it completed is to work together. They're going to need a lot of federal help. Unless you don't need any, which would be okay.
We're going to need a lot of federal help.
And that's in response, of course, to the wildfires which devastated parts of Los Angeles earlier this month. Meanwhile, earlier today, Trump laid out two conditions for federal disaster aid to be sent to California. One, he wants voter ID in that state, and two, he's demanding water to be released. It's unclear, though, how Governor Gavin Newsom, who has recently pushed back against Trump's criticism about the state's response, will respond to Trump's demands. And earlier today, while in North Carolina, Trump visited Asheville, which was devastated by Hurricane Helene back in September. And while there, Trump says he will sign a new executive order to basically reform, if not just to get rid of the Federal Emergency Management Agency, or FEMA. He says states should handle disaster response. Watch.
I'd like to see the states take care of disasters. Let the state take care of the tornadoes and the hurricanes and all of the other things that happen. And I think you're going to find it a lot less expensive. You'll do it for less than half, and you're going to get a lot quicker response. FEMA has been a very big disappointment. They cost a tremendous amount of money.
And President Trump also met with families affected by the hurricane in those areas. He says he will sign an executive order to slash red tape to help the affected families recover more quickly. And meanwhile, just earlier today, he also said this. Watch.
Today, I'll also be signing an executive order slashing all red tape and bureaucratic barriers and permits to ensure the rapid reconstruction of the roads here in western North Carolina. We're going to go through a permitting process that's called no permitting, just get it done.
And Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt, in her first formal gaggle with reporters on Air Force One today, says that President Trump's trips to both states today show that he is showing up for Americans in both red and blue states. She also recapped President Trump's first 100 hours in office, which happened this afternoon. She says that the U.S. has already seen over 500 illegal immigrants arrested and hundreds more deported on military aircraft, which is a first in recent decades. Jack.
Things are certainly moving quickly there. Iris, thank you. Now, wildfire recovery remains a priority. Residents in Southern California to them as President Trump prepares for a visit later today. NTD's Christina Corona is on the ground in Pasadena speaking with locals about their thoughts on Trump's visit.
We're here in the city of Pasadena, where hundreds of residents are still recovering from the impact of the devastating wildfires. With President Trump visiting some of the burn areas today in Los Angeles, I spoke to several locals who shared their thoughts on how he can address these ongoing challenges.
Day laborers from the Pasadena Community Job Center have gone above and beyond to organize aid for those in need.
For the last 2 weeks, the day laborers of this center have organized a distribution hub where families who have been impacted by the fires and the windstorm can come get water, food, baby materials, hygiene supplies, different things that people need.
They've also set up fire relief brigades. Hundreds of volunteers have taken to the streets of Pasadena and Altadena to clear fallen trees, branches, and debris that blocked roadways after the windstorm. As President Trump visits areas devastated by the wildfires Friday afternoon, local residents share their perspectives on how he can contribute to recovery efforts.
Here, the day laborers welcome President Trump. If he wants to come, the day laborers have their tools. They have gloves for him, they have a rake for him, they have a mask for him to protect him from all the smoke. and we welcome him to come and join our efforts in cleaning up the streets and supporting those families that have been impacted.
From the president's perspective, he needs to actually come here to see not only the destruction areas, but also these large events, that it's all community, that the government's not helping us, and we need government assistance with this because the scale is so large.
And what one volunteer wants President Trump to know.
It's just understanding that we need more firefighters, that we need more water, that we need more tools so that, we don't get into this situation again.
Many donation sites are no longer accepting items because they've reached capacity, but the community remains dedicated to helping those who have lost everything.
I spoke with several workers with the Pasadena Job Center who said they don't plan to close this distribution center anytime soon, that they plan to help the residents in need for weeks to come. Reporting from the city of Pasadena, Christina Corona, NTD News.
And an emergency roundtable with local officials to assess the unfolding devastation. Be sure to stay tuned for that as we bring you live coverage from Ground Zero. And now U.S. military planes began deporting illegal immigrants today as President Trump ramped up immigration enforcement. The Pentagon is prepared to send even more troops to the southern border. Meanwhile, a New Jersey mayor speaks out against local migration enforcement actions. Here's the story.
It was good to note, though, that the organization has already started following the rules and that the recent executive orders that President Trump issued regarding DEIA and dismantling that within the agency. That's been one of the biggest challenges, in my personal opinion, over the last few years. I suspect Ratcliff's team is going to try to get the organization back on some stronger footing and focus more on what it was originally designed to do, which is to recruit spies and steal secrets.
Now, how can energy independence serve the U.S. as a strategic asset here?
Yeah, well, energy is power, right? And figuratively and literally. I think if the United States continues to rely on foreign nations to meet its energy requirements, that puts us at a disadvantage. In national security matters, in our ability to muster our own economy and production. All these things really are critical if we're going to be ready for the next 10, 15, 20 years. When instead, if we start investing in new technologies that are proven or maybe not so proven, but certainly can't meet the demand of what we need right now in production and in growth, we're going to have some significant challenges keeping up with countries like China. If you look at China, they're building coal plants just about every other day. We don't do that here in the United States. We actually do abide by our agreements when it comes to pollution and control. That's not the case in a lot of places in the world. So we tend to handcuff ourselves in a lot of ways, and that prevents us then to making the necessary investments today that we need to have so that hopefully in the future we can get to a clean energy world.
It seems like the Trump administration is already working toward that goal with withdrawing from the Paris Climate Agreement and aiming to reclaim the Panama Canal. How do these align with those goals?
Well, like I said, we are a nation that follows the rule of law. We were handcuffing ourselves with the Paris Accord. Other countries, what they report and what they actually do, a lot of times is not the same thing. And it's very easy for countries like China or Russia or others to stand up and say, oh, we will do this and we will control our pollutants this way or that way. But then at the end of the day, we find out that they don't. And there's really no penalty if you don't, right? As for the Panama Canal, that plays into all of these things and a little bit more too. I mean, it is right there. It is in our hemisphere. When we gave the canal to the Panamanians, this is long before anyone could imagine what the world would look like today. And what's happened, unfortunately, is, especially over the last 4 years, what we've seen is China and other adversaries like Russia and even Iran make significant gains within our own hemisphere, something that was unheard of only just 10 years ago. And now we're seeing that start to play out. The big national security issue, obviously, is control over the crossing between the Atlantic Ocean and the Pacific Ocean. You can imagine a scenario that China, for example, takes aggressive military action against Taiwan, well, then the question becomes, how do we get our Atlantic fleet into the Pacific theater if we don't have full control of that canal? I trust the Panamanian people. I think they're great people. I think the president there really has the best intention and is doing what's best for his country. But how can you expect Panama to negotiate across the table from China? I mean, the economy of scale just isn't there. So Panama really needs to have us as its ally in any type of negotiation like that, and to make sure that China is regulated to just commerce and doesn't turn the Panama Canal into something that none of us want here on this side of the ocean. Cuba, Nicaragua, Venezuela, Panama Canal, this serves as kind of like a little arc, right, just below us. Here in North America, and it could become a real challenge if we need to conduct military operations anywhere in the world.
And now lastly, as based on your 20 and more years as a CIA officer, where do you think the second Trump administration should focus its efforts immediately going forward and in the long term?
The primary thing that I would worry about right now is China, without a doubt. And China's continued growth, its military, its naval capabilities. It's very, very open about its plans regarding Taiwan. And what we're seeing is their Belt and Road Initiative rolled out throughout other parts of the world and more countries, not seeing an alternative, having witnessed what I would say weak leadership from the United States for a number of years. They're turning more to China to provide the kinds of assurances and economic trade that maybe we weren't paying as much attention to as we should have. So I think the steps that the CIA ought to focus, where it should muster its resources, are in the developing nations, particularly Latin America, since it's so close, Africa because of its resources and its democracies and smaller countries there. China, Russia, they are no friends of democratic governments, right? So they're going to do as much as they can to sway governments, to corrupt governments, to move them into the direction that favors whatever they want to accomplish.
Well, with that, Rick De La Torre, thank you very much for your insight here today.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you for watching the Capitol Report. If you want to see our full broadcast, check us out at epochtv.com.